stencils that I think are going to make it really easy for you to make beautiful faces. So the first is this profile that you can see here, which is really cool. This is the 12 by 12 version. And the second is this 3/4, and that's because the person is turned 3/4 of the way. Not quite profile, not quite straight on. So I want to show you how easy it is to use these stencils. So what I'm going to do is I am here in my art journal right here, and you can see I have a sort of a collage page here and a painted page here, and I have a piece of palette paper with some dried paint on it, except this is some black paint. This is stencil paint. This is the Deco Art stencil paint, which unfortunately I think they don't make anymore, but you just want a really thick black paint. You can also use spray paint, which I've used before. And I'm simply going to place the stencil right over my collaged page, and I do try to put it, you know, figure out how I want it. Her ponytail is going to run off here. I could make her go across the crack like this if I wanted to include more of her face on here, or I could have her just be on the one side. I vote let's go right across that crack. I'm a great believer in going right across that seam to unite our pages. So I'm going to go right across there, and with my sponge and my paint here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to dab into the pool of paint. I don't want too much paint on here. It's going to roll under the stencil. I want very little. And I'm going to dab off so that I don't have that much paint on here. And then I'm simply going to go up and down, up and down, up and down through this stencil. So you don't need to watch me do all that in regular time. We can go right into fast forward. Okay, once you have stenciled the whole thing in, you're simply going to pull away the stencil. Ooh! Look how cool that looks. I love it. But here's the thing about a stencil, which is you can see there's lots of lines that aren't connected because that's how the stencil holds together. So what I'm going to do now is I'm simply going to take a small paintbrush, and I'm just going to go right into my paint that's right here. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to connect like where the forehead is here, where the hair connects in. And not only is this going to help the stencil look more like a painting, but it's also going to help it look more like I painted it, because it'll make it a little bit imperfect, because obviously my line won't be totally thin, it'll be a little bit messy, it will be less uniform. And again, my goal is to make this not look like a stencil. The more it looks like something that I just took the time to actually paint in here, the better. And I'll continue the shoulders down where they don't go all the way down, you know, connect the lip bits, deal with the eye here, you know. You want to just hit all those little details so that, again, it's very clear that this is something that you painted and not something that you stenciled. I just think it looks a little bit better if you can do that. Okay, now I'm going to add a little bit of color into my girl. So I might do something like, I'm thinking paint her eyes maybe, so that she has maybe blue eyes. And just get some regular old acrylic paint out. Put out a little bit. And give her, oh, you know what? My black paint is a little wet. So I'm going to dry that up with a heat gun real fast.
Can build a
okay,
castle.
so now that it's dry, I'm ready to give her some blue eyes. And you could do this obviously any color, any way that you want, whatever works for you. And then the other thing is, after I've done this, is I'm going to get some white paint, because I want the whites of her eyes to actually be white, and I want to give her face a little bit of shading. So let me dry that up, and then I'll get some white paint. So I'm taking my white paint, and I'm making her have whites of her eyes. That's very important. People always look a little demonic if they don't have whites of their eyes. And then I'm going to give her eyelid a little bit of white. Maybe her nose, where I feel like the light would be hitting it, and I might smush that into her forehead. I'm thinking about like, where's the light coming from and how's it gonna hit her face. So obviously for my purposes, the light's coming from here, so that probably means this cheek might get a little bit of a highlight. Maybe give her a bit of a cheekbone up here that has a little bit of a highlight. There's no right or wrong. This is really about you making some artistic choices. Maybe give a little bit of her ear, some white. Lower lip gets a little bit maybe. Maybe hit her nose a little bit more. There you go. Just getting it in. Maybe get her chin a little. I just use my finger to blend it all. Maybe the front of her shoulder. Get some. A little bit in the hollow of her neck. You never know. Sometimes I feel like this part is exposed a little bit, so maybe it gets a little whitening, a little lightening. Into her shoulder here a little bit. And then I'm going to look at some of the places that I want to darken up a little bit. And so I'm just going to take a very wet brush and I'm going to go into the stencil paint that I already have here, and I'm just thinning it out because I'm adding water to make it be a really thin wash of paint. And I'm going to basically take like her hair, which I think needs a little bit of a shadow, so behind her ear it might be, and behind her neck. Okay, blend that out. That's very watery. And again, here, just give her hair a little bit more darkness. And maybe up there a little bit as well. There we go. And then maybe she might have a cheekbone shadow. So again, this is very watery paint. And if you don't like it, you can always wipe it up with the very watery paint. That's a lot of shadow, so I might remove some of that. Maybe here, maybe under her nose. That makes her look like she has a mustache, so I'm just going to pick that up. You know, maybe a little under her eye. Shadow of the neck into there. And again, if it's too much, your fingers are a great blending tool for getting rid of stuff. And if your fingers aren't enough, just take some paper towel and blot it up. Paint is enormously forgiving. People seem to think that paint is very permanent, but in a lot of ways you can really make paint do whatever you want. It's super, super forgiving. So we're just gonna hit it up with our fingers and get things going a little bit. Give her, that's a lot of nostril. I'm gonna keep going until I get it right. I'm very determined. If nothing else, I always say what I lack in skill, I make up for in enthusiasm. And again, I might like, fix in the nose a little bit. How about the eye there? Stick my hand in the blue. There are so many choices to be made. And then, I am going to give her that little glint in her eye that always makes a huge difference. If you're interested in more information about stenciling, I do have a free class called Stenciling 101. And if you're interested in more about painting faces, I have a DVD that's called All About Faces. That just gives you some of the helpful hints and tips you need. But there you go, like that little glint, which makes a huge difference. But we're not done yet. I want to really make her stand out from this background. So what I'm going to do is I am going to take some paint, and I prefer to use a heavy bodied acrylic when I do this, but you can use whatever works for you. And I'm going to put some out, and then I'm going to take a nice dry brush. This one is wet, so I'm just going to squeeze it out, and I'm simply going to paint around the figure, and that's just really going to pop her right off this page. So you don't have to take my word for it. Wait and see. All the powers that I possess, yeah. Girl, you're the key to my happiness, and okay, it's looking really good to me, except I'm annoyed by how white this strip is here. So I think I'm going to put a little bit of fluid acrylic just with my finger right on there, just to make it a little less starkly white, which makes me happy. Let me dry that up. Like the bird. Looking good. So you can see how absolutely quick and easy it was for me to create this unbelievably fabulous looking face you know, and it took basically no skill, just a little bit of stenciling, a little bit of shadowing, and a whole lot of fun. So I want to show you how to do this same thing with the profile stencil. It's the same process, so I'm just going to show that one in fast forward. Okay, before I do this, I just want to point out that stencils are reversible. So you don't have to do one side or the other. This is the way that you'll see it, I think, in the package. But I think for this page, I'm going to do it this way. And the other thing to note is this is a page that is mostly white. And that's awesome. Just because I've done it on top of collage, you can do it on top of a plain piece of paper. You can do this on canvas. And it's a great way to create a canvas really quickly. And I think I'm going to put the face off to the side, or no, let's put her directly in the middle because that's the way I feel. And let's go into fast forward, and I'm just gonna fix her up. Profile, and this is done, and you'll notice there are a couple things that I didn't do, or I did do that I didn't do with the 3/4 necessarily. So I left the background alone because it was mostly plain and the face didn't need that pop. And then you'll notice that I only did a tiny bit of white, again because things are mostly white, just really in the eye and on that lip. And then I used red, an unconventional color, a little bit to do some shading, just to give the face some structure. So there are really, it's up to you and your imagination and your style. You can really make these stencils work for you in whatever way you want them to. So I'm really excited, and I hope that you are too. And please let me know if you have any questions at all.